Hells Angels.
According to court documents, the biker gang allegedly poured millions gained from an underground gambling ring into
The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club stands as one of the most recognized and feared biker organizations in the world. Over time, stories of their alleged racketeering, brutal reprisals, and secret alliances have captivated the public. Many high-ranking or particularly aggressive members are now spending their days behind bars. Let's explore the 10 most dangerous Hells Angels that are currently rotting in jail, uncovering their rise to prominence, their criminal exploits, and the fateful missteps that sealed their journeys to incarceration. Number 10. Raymond Ray Ray Folks.
The former president of the Hells Angels Sonoma chapter, Raymond Ray Ray Folks, is charged with conspiracy, assault, and witness intimidation.
Raymond Ray Ray Folks might not be a household name to the general public, but within the Hells Angels organization, he was somebody who mattered. Born in 1961, Folks rose through the ranks to become president of the Sonoma County chapter in California. With his Hells Angels patches proudly displayed on his leather vest and an intimidating presence, Ray Ray commanded respect both inside the club and in the criminal underworld. As chapter president, Folks wasn't just any ordinary member, he called shots. His word carried weight, and when he gave orders, people listened. New recruits wanted to impress him, established members sought his approval, and law enforcement kept him under surveillance. Ray Ray had the kind of power within the club that most members could only dream about. Throughout his years with the Hells Angels, Folks built up quite a rap sheet. Bar fights, assaults, and various criminal schemes decorated his record. But one incident in particular thrust him into the national spotlight, the infamous Laughlin River Run riot of 2002. This annual motorcycle gathering in Nevada turned bloody when Hells Angels members clashed with their bitter rivals, the Mongols Motorcycle Club. When the dust settled, several people lay dead and many more were injured. Ray Ray was identified as one of the main participants in the violent confrontation, leading to charges of assault and rioting. But surprisingly, violence wasn't what ultimately put Ray Ray behind bars for the long haul. In 2011, federal agents uncovered something unexpected: a sophisticated mortgage fraud scheme with Folks playing a central role. This wasn't your typical biker crime. Ray Ray and several other Hells Angels members had set up an elaborate operation that involved falsifying information on mortgage applications to secure loans, then manipulating the system to extract millions of dollars. The case demonstrated just how diverse the Hells Angels criminal enterprises had become. Beyond the stereotypical violence and drug dealing that people associate with biker gangs, members like Ray Ray were involved in complex financial crimes that required planning, connections, and business knowledge. This wasn't just brawn, it was criminal brains at work. When the evidence against him mounted, Ray Ray found himself facing serious federal charges. Federal judges don't take kindly to mortgage fraud, especially when it's connected to an organization with the Hells Angels reputation. After conviction, Folks was sentenced to years in federal prison, a dramatic fall from his once powerful position within the motorcycle club. Today, Raymond Ray Ray Folks spends his days in a prison cell, a far cry from the freedom of riding his Harley down California's coastal highways with his brothers. His case serves as a stark reminder that the Hells Angels' criminal activities extend far beyond their tough guy image into sophisticated financial schemes that can bring down even their highest-ranking members. While Ray Ray's downfall came through white-collar crime, other Hells Angels like Otis Garrett fell because of more traditional biker-related offenses involving drugs and violence. Number 9. Otis Garrett. Otis Garrett built his reputation in the Hells Angels Ventura chapter the old-fashioned way, through unwavering loyalty and a willingness to handle the club's dirty work. Unlike some members who sought leadership positions, Garrett was known as a reliable soldier, someone who didn't need the spotlight but could always be counted on when things got rough. For decades, Garrett proudly wore his Hells Angels colors, becoming a familiar face at club gatherings across California's Pacific coast. His weathered appearance and no-nonsense demeanor earned him respect within the organization and fear outside of it. Throughout the years, Garrett developed a reputation for toughness and reliability that made him valuable to the club's operations. Garrett's criminal record tells the story of a man fully committed to the outlaw biker lifestyle. While some Hells Angels managed to balance club life with legitimate work, Garrett embraced the darker side of the organization. His lengthy record included multiple arrests for assault, typically connected to conflicts with rival motorcycle clubs like the Mongols and Vagos. These violent encounters were part of the ongoing territorial disputes that defined relations between competing outlaw clubs in Southern California. But it was drug trafficking that ultimately led to Garrett's downfall. In 2014, the Ventura Police Department coordinated a major operation targeting the Hells Angels drug distribution network in the county. This wasn't a small-time bust. It involved multiple law enforcement agencies working together to dismantle what they described as a sophisticated operation distributing methamphetamine and cocaine throughout the region. When police raided Garrett's residence, they discovered substantial quantities of drugs and multiple firearms. For Garrett, who already had felony convictions on his record, the possession of these weapons added significant complications to his legal troubles. Each gun found in his home represented another charge, another reason for prosecutors to seek maximum penalties. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Drugs, guns, surveillance footage, phone records, and testimony from informants all painted a damning picture of his involvement in organized criminal activity. Prosecutors portrayed Garrett as a key figure in the Hells Angels drug operation in Ventura County, presenting evidence showing how he helped coordinate distribution networks, managed relations with suppliers, and enforced the club's control over local drug markets. The judge showed little mercy during sentencing, citing Garrett's extensive criminal history and his central role in drug trafficking operations. For a man who had spent decades living by his own rules on the open road, the confinement of prison walls represented a dramatic change of circumstances. Today, Otis Garrett remains behind bars, serving his sentence in a California state prison. His case demonstrates how local chapters of the Hells Angels operate criminal enterprises that inevitably attract law enforcement attention. His fall from respected club member to prison inmate reveals the risks that come with the outlaw lifestyle. While Garrett's criminal activities were centered in Ventura County, other Hells Angels members, like Randy "Mad" Jerger, operated on a much larger scale, becoming targets of nationwide manhunts and international police operations. Number 8. Randy Yeager.
Randy Yeager is one of the worst of them all.
Known by his nickname Mad, Randy Yeager was the regional president of the Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana area outlaws.
Few members of the Hells Angels have achieved the level of notoriety that surrounds Randy "Mad" Jerger. His story reads like something from a crime movie, rising through club ranks, becoming a regional president, facing serious criminal charges, and then disappearing for nearly 2 decades as one of America's most wanted fugitives. Born in 1956, Jerger grew up during a time when motorcycle clubs were gaining prominence across America. The rebellious culture of the 1960s and 70s attracted many young men seeking brotherhood and adventure outside mainstream society. For Jerger, the Hells Angels offered not just excitement, but a chance to build a reputation and gain respect in a world that operated by its own rules. What set Jerger apart was his natural leadership abilities and fierce dedication to the club. Over time, he rose through the ranks to become the Midwest president of the Hells Angels, overseeing chapters across several states. This wasn't just any position, it placed him among the elite of the club's hierarchy and made him a high-value target for law enforcement agencies monitoring outlaw motorcycle clubs. His nickname MAD wasn't chosen randomly. Fellow members and rivals alike knew Jerger for his explosive temperament and unwillingness to back down from confrontation. When disputes arose between the Hells Angels and rival clubs, Jerger often stood at the front lines, ready to defend his brothers and the club's reputation at any cost. This fierce loyalty earned him deep respect within the organization, but also put him directly in the crosshairs of federal investigators. In 1997, everything changed for Jerger when a federal grand jury handed down indictments against him and several other Hells Angels members. The charges were extensive and serious: drug trafficking, racketeering, and various violent crimes. Federal prosecutors had built their case over years, gathering evidence through informants, surveillance, and undercover operations. When the indictments came down, it was clear that authorities were determined to dismantle what they saw as a criminal organization operating under the guise of a motorcycle club. But unlike many of his fellow club members who were arrested and faced trial, Jerger made a fateful decision. Rather than surrender to authorities and fight the charges in court, he vanished. This choice put him on the FBI's most wanted list and launched what would become one of the longest manhunts in American history. For 17 years, Randy "Mad" Jerger lived as a ghost. While his former brothers faced trials and prison sentences, Jerger managed to stay one step ahead of the law. Rumors placed him in various countries, sometimes in Canada, other times in South America or Europe. Some believed he had help from international Hells Angels chapters, while others thought he might have established a new identity entirely separate from the biker world. The mystery of Jerger's whereabouts came to an end in 2014, when authorities finally caught up with him in Mexico's Baja California region. After nearly 2 decades on the run, the former Hells Angels leader was captured and brought back to the United States to face justice. His arrest made headlines across the country, marking the end of one of America's longest-standing fugitive cases. Upon his return to American soil, Jerger faced a justice system determined to make an example of him. Despite the years that had passed since his original indictment, prosecutors pushed forward with the case, presenting evidence of his involvement in drug trafficking and racketeering operations. After a trial that drew significant media attention, Jerger was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Today, the man once known as Mad spends his days in federal prison, his legend within the Hells Angels now serving as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the club's defiant spirit. His story of evasion and capture has become part of Hells Angels lore, discussed in hushed tones among members who still respect his determination to avoid capture for so long. While Randy Jerger evaded authorities through traditional means, hiding, disguises, and border crossings, another Hells Angel used his professional position as cover for criminal activities. James Kaufman's story shows how the reach of the Hells Angels extended beyond stereotypical bikers into surprising corners of society. Number 7 Doctor, James Kaufman.
Today, James Kaufman, age 69, and Ferdinand Augello, age 62, were charged with murder in connection with the death of April Kaufman.
The story of Dr. James Kaufman stands apart from typical Hells Angels narratives, representing how the club's criminal network extended beyond tattooed bikers to include individuals from unexpected walks of life. As a board-certified endocrinologist from Atlantic County, New Jersey, with a successful medical practice, Kaufman presented himself as a respected healthcare professional, while secretly maintaining connections to one of America's most notorious motorcycle clubs. Born in 1966 to an upper-middle-class family in Philadelphia, Kaufman followed a traditional path to success. He graduated from Temple University School of Medicine in 1992, completing his residency and endocrinology fellowship at prestigious institutions before establishing his practice in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey in 2000. Colleagues described him as brilliant but somewhat detached, a competent physician who drove expensive cars and lived in a sprawling $850,000 home in Linwood with his wife, April. Unlike the leather-clad Harley-riding members typically associated with the Hells Angels, Kaufman maintained an impeccable professional appearance that allowed him to move through medical circles without raising suspicion. His white coat, designer suits, and Ivy League vocabulary gave him a level of respectability that most outlaw bikers could never achieve, making him particularly valuable to criminal networks. Kaufman's double life began to unravel on May 10, 2012, with the shocking murder of his wife, April Kaufman, a 47-year-old local radio talk show host, veterans advocate, and businesswoman who had been married to the doctor for 10 years. A handyman discovered April's body, shot multiple times in the face and torso, in the couple's bedroom. Initially, the case puzzled investigators. April was well liked in the community, serving on the county's Veteran Advisory Board while running a catering business and hosting a weekly radio program on WOND. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered disturbing connections. According to court documents, April had recently told friends she had discovered James was involved in something dangerous and was planning to divorce him. She had consulted a divorce attorney just days before her murder and had begun moving personal belongings out of their shared home. The investigation exposed a massive prescription drug operation. Dr. Kaufman had allegedly been writing fraudulent prescriptions for OxyContin and other powerful opioid medications since at least 2011. According to prosecutors, Kaufman wrote hundreds of prescriptions monthly for individuals who were never properly examined, creating a pipeline of thousands of pills with a street value exceeding $3 million annually. What made Kaufman's operation particularly sophisticated was his meticulous record-keeping. He maintained false patient charts, documented fictional examinations, and even arranged for blood tests to create the appearance of legitimate medical care. Meanwhile, these patients, many recruited by associates with connections to outlaw motorcycle clubs, would fill the prescriptions at different pharmacies across multiple counties to avoid detection. Perhaps most surprisingly, investigators discovered Kaufman's connections crossed traditional outlaw motorcycle club boundaries. He initially formed relationships with members of the Pagans Motorcycle Club, traditional rivals of the Hells Angels, through patients at his medical practice around 2008. As his illegal prescribing operation expanded, he established connections with Hells Angels members as well, becoming a valuable supplier to both organizations. A dangerous position in the typically territorial world of outlaw motorcycle clubs. The most disturbing revelation came when investigators connected Kaufman to his wife's murder through Frances Mulholland, a cousin of a Pagans member. According to authorities, when April discovered her husband's illegal activities and threatened divorce, which would both end their marriage and potentially expose his criminal operations, Kaufman orchestrated her murder through his biker connections. Court records indicate he paid Mulholland $20,000 to kill April, with the hitman later dying of a drug overdose before he could be charged. After a 5-year investigation involving the FBI, DEA, and local authorities, police finally arrested Kaufman on June 13, 2017. The charges were extensive: first-degree murder, racketeering, leading a narcotics network, maintaining a drug production facility, and weapons offenses. When officers arrived at his office with an arrest warrant, Kaufman revealed how far he had fallen from his professional persona. He brandished a 9mm handgun, leading to a tense 45-minute standoff with police before negotiators convinced him to surrender. Following his arrest, Kaufman's case became a media sensation across New Jersey. The story of a respected doctor involved with outlaw bikers and implicated in his wife's murder captivated the public's attention, earning front-page coverage and extensive television reporting. It exposed the unexpected reach of organizations like the Hells Angels into seemingly respectable corners of society. In a final dark twist to his story, Kaufman never faced sentencing for his crimes. On January 26, 2018, just weeks after being indicted by a grand jury, but before his trial could begin, guards found him dead in his cell at the Atlantic County Justice Facility. He had hanged himself with a bedsheet. His suicide left many questions unanswered, but didn't diminish the impact of his case. Today, the Kaufman case has become a landmark example, cited in medical ethics courses and law enforcement training about the opioid epidemic. His story serves as a sobering reminder that the Hells Angels' criminal operations aren't limited to stereotypical bikers, but can involve professionals from all walks of life. It also underscores the devastating impact of prescription drug diversion and how trusted medical professionals have sometimes played a crucial role in feeding addiction across America. While Dr. Kaufman represented an unusual connection to the Hells Angels world, more traditional members like Rusty Coons embodied the leadership and organizational structure that made the club's criminal activities possible on a larger scale, creating the demand for the very drugs that doctors like Kaufman illicitly supplied. Number 6. Rusty Coons.
Happens, and all of a sudden everything you've held dear, everything that you love.
Harold Rusty Coons commanded attention wherever he went. Standing 6 feet 5 inches with a muscular 245-pound frame covered in distinctive Hells Angels tattoos, he physically embodied the intimidating presence the club cultivated. Born in 1953 in Bakersfield, California, Coons grew up during a transformative era when motorcycle clubs were evolving from groups of thrill-seeking veterans into organized fraternities with their own codes, territories, and increasingly criminal enterprises. From an early age, Coons showed an interest in motorcycles that went beyond casual enthusiasm. While other kids had posters of rock stars on their bedroom walls, young Rusty was fascinated by the powerful machines that symbolized freedom and rebellion. By 16, he had already purchased his first motorcycle, a beat-up Harley Sportster that he meticulously restored in his father's garage. This passion only grew stronger as he matured, eventually leading him to seek out others who shared his dedication to the biker lifestyle. Coons first encountered the Hells Angels at a motorcycle rally in 1974, immediately drawn to their brotherhood and outlaw reputation. After a 2-year prospecting period where he proved his loyalty through increasingly risky activities, Coons earned his patches and became a full member of the San Bernardino chapter. His natural charisma, imposing presence, and strategic mind quickly set him apart from ordinary members. What distinguished Coons from many other Hells Angels members was his exceptional leadership ability. Over the years, he rose through the club's ranks, eventually serving as president of both the San Fernando Valley and Orange County chapters at different points in his career. These weren't minor positions. Chapter presidents make decisions affecting dozens of members and oversee territories generating significant income through both legitimate and illegal activities. As a leader, Coons was known for his assertiveness, strategic thinking, and business acumen. Under his guidance, the chapters he led expanded their influence throughout Southern California, establishing profitable relationships with drug suppliers and building a sophisticated distribution network that moved methamphetamine throughout the region. Fellow members respected his dedication to the club and his willingness to take calculated risks on its behalf. FBI documents later revealed that during Coons' leadership in the 1990s, the Orange County chapter's drug operations were generating over $2 million annually. He implemented a complex system where lower-ranking members and associates handled street-level sales, insulating higher-ranking members from direct criminal exposure. This organizational structure allowed the chapter to operate more efficiently while minimizing legal risks to its leadership, at least temporarily. Coons' first major legal trouble came in 1999 when authorities arrested him on charges of conspiring to distribute methamphetamine. The investigation had targeted the Hells Angels drug trafficking operations, with Coons identified as a key figure in organizing distribution networks throughout Southern California. Despite hiring top defense attorneys and maintaining his innocence, the evidence proved overwhelming. Surveillance recordings, financial records, and testimony from cooperating witnesses established his central role in the operation, resulting in a 6-year federal prison sentence. This first prison term might have convinced some to walk away from the outlaw lifestyle, but Coons remained dedicated to the Hells Angels. Upon his release in 2005, he returned to active membership, despite the strict terms of his parole. Within months, he had reclaimed significant influence within the organization, serving as an advisor to newer chapter presidents and helping coordinate activities between different Hells Angels chapters throughout California. In 2011, Coons again found himself facing serious legal troubles when he was charged with illegal firearms possession. This case was connected to a controversial ATF operation called Black Biscuit, which aimed to infiltrate and gather evidence against outlaw motorcycle clubs. For over 18 months, undercover agents had posed as bikers, gaining the trust of Hells Angels members and documenting their alleged criminal activities through hidden cameras and recording devices. Coons and his defense team argued vigorously that the charges were the result of entrapment, claiming that undercover agents had pressured or manipulated him into illegal actions he wouldn't otherwise have committed. Court transcripts revealed heated exchanges between Coons' attorney and federal prosecutors over the ethics of the operation, with the defense arguing that agents had crossed legal boundaries in their pursuit of convictions. Despite these arguments, the court was not persuaded. Video evidence showed Coons not only possessing the illegal firearms, but also discussing their potential use against rival motorcycle clubs. He was convicted and sentenced to another 15-year prison term at the Federal Correctional Institution in Victorville, California. Today, at 70 years old, Rusty Coons continues to serve his sentence, with release not anticipated until 2026. Prison officials have documented his continued influence within the Hells Angels network, noting that he receives numerous visitors from active members and maintains correspondence with chapters across the country. According to confidential informants, his advice is still sought on major club decisions, and his approval carries significant weight even from behind prison walls. His case serves as a potent example of how involvement with the Hells Angels can lead even the most cautious members into serious legal jeopardy. The very qualities that made Coons successful within the club, his leadership abilities, strategic thinking, and willingness to take calculated risks, ultimately contributed to the circumstances that led to his imprisonment. Despite his incarceration, Coons' influence within the Hells Angels remains significant. Younger members still speak of him with reverence, and his approach to club leadership continues to shape how chapter presidents operate throughout California. His story has become part of the club's internal mythology. A cautionary tale, perhaps, but also an example of unwavering loyalty to the organization, even in the face of severe personal consequences. While Rusty Coons commanded respect through his leadership of local chapters, few Hells Angels have shaped the entire organization as profoundly as our next entry. A man who defined what it meant to be a Hells Angel for generations of members who would follow in his footsteps. Number 5. Sonny Barger.
Can you tell me who becomes a member of a motorcycle club? What's the kind of person that the lifestyle is?
Well, it's just a guy that likes to ride a motorcycle and sort of, have a free will and kind of lifestyle. Now, there's a lot of people that ride motorcycles that don't join clubs.
If there's one name that stands above all others in the history of the Hells Angels, it has to be Ralph "Sonny" Barger. While many members have come and gone over the decades, Barger's influence on the club has been so profound that he's often referred to as the face of the Hells Angels worldwide. Born in 1938 in Modesto, California, Barger's early life wasn't easy. Raised primarily by his alcoholic father after his mother abandoned the family, young Ralph learned street smarts and self-reliance from an early age. By the time he was a teenager, Barger had already developed the tough, independent attitude that would define his life. After a brief stint in the army, from which he received an honorable discharge when they discovered he was only 16 years old, Barger returned to California, ready to find his place in the world. That place would be on two wheels. In 1957, at just 18 years old, Barger founded the Oakland chapter of the Hells Angels, which would go on to become the most influential chapter in the entire organization. Under his leadership, the Oakland Hells Angels established many of the traditions, rules, and symbols that would eventually spread to chapters worldwide. Barger didn't just join the outlaw biker movement, he helped define what it would become. What separated Barger from other outlaw bikers was his intelligence and media savvy. While most Hells Angels avoided publicity and reporters, Barger understood the power of image. He appeared in national magazines, gave newspaper interviews, and eventually authored books about his experiences. This willingness to step into the spotlight made him the unofficial spokesman for the entire club, a position that gave him enormous influence both inside and outside the organization. Barger's charisma was magnetic, attracting people to the Hells Angels lifestyle. He spoke about freedom, brotherhood, and loyalty in ways that resonated with disaffected young men seeking meaning and community. His articulate defense of the outlaw lifestyle, despite its obvious dangers and questionable legality, brought many new members into the club who might otherwise never have considered joining. Of course, Sonny Barger's life with the Hells Angels wasn't all media appearances and recruitment. Like many members, he faced his share of legal troubles. His first major confrontation with the law came in 1972, when he and 3 other Hells Angels were charged with murdering a Texas drug dealer. After a lengthy trial that brought national attention, all 4 were acquitted due to lack of evidence. Barger's most serious legal troubles came in 1988, when federal authorities charged him and 14 other Hells Angels members with conspiracy to violate federal explosives and firearms laws. The indictment alleged that they had plotted to kill members of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club and blow up their clubhouse in Louisville, Kentucky, in retaliation for an attack on Hells Angels members. This time, Barger couldn't escape conviction, he was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. This wasn't Barger's first time behind bars. Throughout his life with the Hells Angels, he served several shorter sentences for various offenses, including drug possession and assault. Each time he emerged from prison, his status within the club remained undiminished. If anything, his periods of incarceration only enhanced his reputation among the Angels. Beyond his legal troubles, Barger faced personal challenges that tested his legendary toughness. In the early 1980s, he was diagnosed with throat cancer, likely a result of decades of heavy smoking. The disease required the removal of his vocal cords, leaving him with a distinctively raspy voice produced by an artificial voice box. Despite this setback, Barger continued his active lifestyle with the Hells Angels, showing the same determination that had defined his earlier years. What truly set Barger apart from other Hells Angels leaders was his business acumen. Understanding that the club's outlaw image had commercial value, he worked to protect and monetize the Hells Angels brand. Under his guidance, the club trademarked its famous Death Head logo and aggressively pursued legal action against unauthorized use. This transformation of the Hells Angels into not just a motorcycle club, but a recognizable brand with intellectual property rights showed Barger's forward-thinking and pragmatic approach to leadership. Despite his advanced age and health challenges, Sonny Barger remained a revered figure within the Hells Angels until his death in 2022. His books, including his autobiography, Hells Angel: The Life and Times of Sonny Barger and the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, sold hundreds of thousands of copies, introducing new generations to the outlaw motorcycle lifestyle. His ability to present the Hells Angels as misunderstood freedom seekers rather than dangerous criminals helped shape public perception of the club. While Barger achieved fame within America as the face of the Hells Angels, other members gained notoriety internationally, showing how the club's influence extended worldwide. Brandon Cole represents this global reach, demonstrating how the Hells Angels spread their operations and their criminal activities far beyond American shores. Number 4. Brandon Cole. Far from the California highways where the Hells Angels were born, Brandon the Kiwi Cole built his reputation as one of the most dangerous members of the organization's expanding international network. As a founding member of the Auckland, New Zealand chapter and later a key figure in the Melbourne, Australia chapter, Cole represents how the Hells Angels transformed from an American phenomenon into a sophisticated global criminal enterprise with chapters on every continent. Born in 1972 in Christchurch, New Zealand, Cole's path to becoming a Hells Angel began in his late teens when he developed an obsession with motorcycle culture. Unlike many who joined for the brotherhood or the thrill of the open road, Cole recognized early on that the club could provide opportunities for criminal profit. After serving time in a New Zealand prison for assault in his early 20s, Cole emerged with connections and a reputation that caught the attention of the newly forming Hells Angels presence in the country. Standing just over 6 feet tall with a muscular build enhanced through obsessive prison workouts, Cole cut an intimidating figure even by Hells Angels standards. His arms were covered in traditional Maori-inspired biker tattoos, with HAMC, Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, prominently displayed across his knuckles. Most distinctive was the large Death Head logo tattooed across his back, a permanent commitment to the club that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Cole quickly rose through the ranks after helping establish the Auckland chapter in 1999, becoming the club's sergeant-at-arms within 2 years. His reputation for brutal enforcement and absolute loyalty made him a valuable asset as the Hells Angels expanded their presence throughout the South Pacific. By 2003, his connections had grown so valuable that he was transferred to the Melbourne chapter to help solidify the club's growing drug distribution network between Southeast Asia and Australia. What made Cole particularly valuable to the Hells Angels wasn't just his willingness to use violence, but his remarkable network of international connections. Through family ties in New Zealand and relationships cultivated with Southeast Asian suppliers during his frequent business trips to Thailand and Vietnam, Cole helped establish sophisticated supply routes that brought massive quantities of methamphetamine and heroin into Australia and New Zealand, markets where such drugs commanded some of the highest street prices in the world. Under Cole's guidance, the Hells Angels Melbourne chapter became one of the wealthiest outposts in the entire organization. Intelligence reports from the Australian Federal Police estimated that the operation he oversaw generated upwards of 25 million Australian dollars annually. Cole personally maintained properties in both Melbourne and Auckland, along with a fleet of luxury vehicles and motorcycles that he kept registered under various shell companies. Cole wasn't content to operate solely behind the scenes. Known for his explosive temper and sadistic streak, he became the Melbourne chapter's primary enforcer, personally handling situations when business partners failed to meet obligations or rival gangs encroached on Hells Angels territory. Former associates who later testified against him described incidents where Cole tortured competitors who crossed the organization, reportedly keeping a collection of trophies from these encounters hidden at his heavily fortified compound outside Melbourne. By 2010, Australian authorities had identified Cole as one of the most dangerous organized crime figures in the country. Operation Pacific Thunder, a joint task force between the Australian Federal Police, Victoria Police and New Zealand authorities, placed Cole under intensive surveillance for nearly 2 years, mapping his connections and building an airtight case against the biker. The operation culminated in June 2012, when coordinated pre-dawn raids hit 24 locations across Victoria and New South Wales. When tactical officers breached Cole's compound, they discovered not only his personal arsenal of 17 unregistered firearms, including military-grade weapons with serial numbers filed, but also a sophisticated drug processing laboratory, over $3.4 million in cash, and detailed ledgers documenting the Hells Angels distribution network throughout the South Pacific. The judge showed no mercy, sentencing Cole to 28 years imprisonment with a non-parole period of 22 years, one of the harshest sentences ever imposed on a Hells Angels member in the Pacific region. Additionally, authorities seized over $42 million in assets connected to his criminal empire. Today, Brandon the Kiwi Cole serves his sentence in Port Phillip Prison, a maximum security facility in Victoria where he remains isolated from the brotherhood and freedom that once defined his life. His case represents the increasing sophistication of the Hells Angels' global criminal operations and the corresponding evolution of international law enforcement responses. Despite being thousands of miles from the club's California birthplace, Cole embraced and expanded the same outlaw ethos that defined the Hells Angels from their beginning, building an international criminal network that continues to influence the organization even after his imprisonment. While Cole built his criminal empire across the Pacific, another figure was rising to even greater heights within the Hells Angels' global hierarchy. George Wiegers would become one of the most powerful leaders in the club's history before his own criminal activities brought about his dramatic downfall. Number 3. George Wiegers. In the hierarchy of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, few positions carry more power or responsibility than that of international president. George Wiegers held this coveted position during a crucial period of the club's expansion, overseeing its transformation from an American phenomenon to a global network with chapters on 6 continents. Standing over 6 feet tall with a heavy build that earned him respect in the physical world of outlaw bikers, Wiegers was immediately recognizable by his distinctive appearance. With his weathered face, long beard, and arms covered in traditional biker tattoos, he embodied the Hells Angels aesthetic that had fascinated and terrified the public for decades. Born in the early 1950s, Wiegers came of age during the golden era of American motorcycle culture. Like many young men of his generation, he was drawn to the freedom and rebellion represented by groups like the Hells Angels. What set Wiegers apart, however, was his organizational mind and natural leadership abilities. Where some bikers were content to ride and party, Wiegers saw the potential for the Hells Angels to become something bigger and more powerful. As he rose through the ranks from ordinary member to chapter officer to regional leader, Wiegers developed a reputation for balancing the club's traditional values with modern criminal enterprises. Under his guidance, the Hells Angels diversified their illicit income streams, moving beyond their stereotypical involvement in drugs and prostitution into more sophisticated operations like extortion, money laundering, and infiltration of legitimate businesses. What truly distinguished Wiegers' leadership was his vision for international expansion. Recognizing that the Hells Angels brand had global appeal, he encouraged the establishment of new chapters worldwide. During his tenure as international president, the club significantly increased its presence in Europe, Australia, and South America. Each new chapter represented not just additional members, but new criminal opportunities and extended influence. This international growth didn't go unnoticed by law enforcement. By the early 2000s, federal authorities in the United States had identified the Hells Angels as a significant organized crime threat requiring coordinated response. Waggers became a prime target of these efforts, with investigators building a case that would eventually bring down one of the most powerful figures in the club's history. In 2002, following a multi-year investigation that involved wiretaps, surveillance, and information from confidential informants, federal agents executed simultaneous raids on Hells Angels chapters across the country. Waggers was arrested at his home, where authorities found not only incriminating documents related to the club's operations, but also illegal firearms and significant quantities of drugs. Waggers' trial became a media spectacle that offered rare insights into the inner workings of the Hells Angels. Former members testified about the club's structure and criminal operations, while recordings captured Waggers discussing various illegal activities. Despite his attorney's efforts to portray him as merely the leader of a motorcycle enthusiast group, the evidence of his involvement in organized crime proved overwhelming. After a lengthy trial, the jury found Waggers guilty on multiple counts. The judge, citing the extensive nature of the criminal enterprise Waggers had led and his lack of remorse, handed down a sentence of 23 years in federal prison, effectively a life sentence for a man already in his 50s. Additionally, the court ordered the forfeiture of millions in assets connected to his criminal activities, stripping away the wealth he had accumulated during his years as a Hells Angel. Today, George Waggers remains behind bars, his legendary status within the Hells Angels now serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of leadership in an outlaw organization. Despite his imprisonment, his influence on the club's structure and operations continues to be felt, with many of the international chapters he established still active in their respective countries. Waggers' case highlights the evolution of the Hells Angels from a group of rebellious bikers to a sophisticated criminal organization with global reach. His rise and fall demonstrate both the potential rewards and severe risks that come with ascending to the highest levels of the outlaw biker world. While Waggers' crimes were organizational in nature, involving the coordination of criminal enterprises across multiple countries, other Hells Angels members have fallen due to more personal and violent crimes. One such figure was Daniel "Hothead" Roberts, whose story reveals the darker side of the Hells Angels lifestyle when violence spills over into members' personal lives. Number 2. Daniel Roberts. Some Hells Angels earn their nicknames through amusing incidents or physical characteristics, but Daniel Roberts' road name, Hothead, was a direct warning about his volatile temperament. As Sergeant-at-Arms for the Halifax, Nova Scotia chapter in Canada, Roberts combined his official role as the club's enforcer with a personal tendency toward violence that would eventually lead to tragedy. Born in a small fishing community on Canada's east coast, Roberts' early life gave no indication of the path he would eventually take. Growing up in a working-class family, he initially followed his father into the commercial fishing industry. The hard physical labor and dangerous conditions of life at sea helped build the imposing physical presence that would later serve him well in the biker world. Standing 6 feet 4 inches tall, with powerful shoulders and arms developed through years of hauling fishing nets, Roberts' introduction to the Hells Angels came in his late 20s when he purchased his first motorcycle and began socializing with members of local riding clubs. His size, toughness, and willingness to engage in violence quickly caught the attention of Hells Angels members who were looking to expand their presence in Halifax. After serving as a prospect for nearly 2 years, during which he proved his loyalty through various criminal activities, Roberts received his full membership patches around 2000. What distinguished Roberts within the club was his embrace of the enforcer role. As Sergeant-at-Arms, he was officially responsible for maintaining order at club meetings and ensuring members followed the Hells Angels rules. Unofficially, this position also made him the chapter's primary instrument of violence, the man called upon when someone needed to be intimidated, beaten, or worse. Roberts took to this role with disturbing enthusiasm, building a reputation for brutality that extended beyond the club to the wider criminal underworld of Nova Scotia. The relationship between Roberts and his girlfriend, Shannon MacDonald, embodied the complex and often troubled romantic partnerships that develop around outlaw motorcycle clubs. MacDonald, attracted initially to Roberts's power within the Halifax criminal scene, soon found herself in an increasingly controlling and abusive relationship. Friends later testified that she had repeatedly tried to leave him, only to return after threats and promises of change. The situation reached its breaking point in 2004, when MacDonald finally gathered the courage to end the relationship permanently. According to court testimony, she had begun seeing another man and told friends she was planning to move to another province to escape Roberts's influence. For a man whose identity was built around control and respect, this rejection represented an unacceptable challenge. On April 20, 2004, neighbors heard shouting from Roberts's home, followed by gunshots. When police arrived, they found MacDonald dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Roberts had fled the scene but was arrested the following day at another Hells Angels member's home. The murder weapon, a 9mm handgun with Roberts's fingerprints, was recovered from a nearby lake based on information from a confidential informant. Roberts's trial became one of the most high-profile criminal cases in Halifax history. Prosecutors presented evidence of his history of violence, testimony from witnesses who had heard him threaten MacDonald in the weeks before her murder, and forensic evidence linking him to the crime scene. His defense team attempted to attribute the killing to unknown drug dealers or rival bikers, but the jury remained unconvinced by these alternative theories. After deliberating for just 6 hours, the jury found Roberts guilty of first-degree murder. Under Canadian law, this conviction carried a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. As the judge read the sentence, Roberts showed the same emotionless expression he had maintained throughout the trial, while members of MacDonald's family finally saw some measure of justice for their lost loved one. Today, Daniel "Hothead" Roberts remains incarcerated in a maximum security federal prison in Canada. His case stands as one of the most stark examples of how the Hells Angels culture of violence can spill over from club business into members' personal lives, with tragic consequences. While most crimes associated with outlaw motorcycle clubs involve drugs, extortion, or conflict with rival gangs, Roberts's case reminds us that the capacity for violence fostered in these organizations can claim victims far removed from the biker world. Roberts's violent nature and tragic crime demonstrates the darkest side of the Hells Angels lifestyle. For our final entry, we'll examine another notorious member whose criminal activities have earned him a long-term residence behind bars, replacing our previous entry with someone whose impact on the organization was even more significant. Number 1. Maurice "Mom" Boucher.
Boucher was the head of an elite chapter of the Hells Angels. Everyone knew Mom Boucher was a killer, and he knew everyone knew.
Few names strike as much fear in Canadian law enforcement circles as Maurice "Mom" Boucher. As the former president of the Montreal chapter of the Hells Angels, Boucher wasn't just any outlaw biker. He was the architect of one of the bloodiest periods in Canadian organized crime history. A man whose ambition and ruthlessness transformed the Hells Angels from a motorcycle club into a sophisticated criminal empire in Quebec. Born in 1953 in a working-class Montreal neighborhood, Boucher's path to becoming one of Canada's most notorious criminals began early. By his teens, he was already involved in petty crime, which escalated to armed robbery by his early 20s. After serving time for sexual assault in the 1980s, Boucher found his true calling when he joined the Hells Angels, quickly rising through the ranks due to his intelligence, charisma, and willingness to use extreme violence to achieve his goals. What set Boucher apart from other Hells Angels leaders was his business vision. Under his leadership in the 1990s, the Montreal chapter moved beyond traditional biker crimes into an aggressive expansion of their drug trafficking operations. Boucher understood that control of Montreal's lucrative drug market required both organization and intimidation. He established a structured system where puppet clubs like the Rockers would handle street-level drug sales while the Hells Angels managed wholesale distribution, creating a criminal hierarchy that maximized profits while insulating higher-ranking members from direct criminal exposure. Boucher's nickname Mom, pronounced Môme in French, came not from any maternal qualities, but was supposedly a shortened version of Mommy. Ironic for one of the most feared criminals in Canadian history. Standing around 5 feet 10 inches with a stocky build and often seen with a serious, calculating expression, Boucher didn't need physical intimidation to command respect. His reputation for ordering brutal violence against anyone who crossed him was enough. The infamous Quebec Biker War of the 1990s cemented Boucher's notorious legacy. This conflict between the Hells Angels and the rival Rock Machine Motorcycle Club over control of Quebec's drug trade claimed over 160 lives between 1994 and 2002. Under Boucher's leadership, the Hells Angels didn't just target rival gang members, they engaged in bombings, public assassinations, and intimidation campaigns that horrified ordinary citizens and forced authorities to create specialized biker gang units. Boucher's most shocking order came in 1997, when he directed the assassination of 2 prison guards, Diane Levine and Pierre Rondeau. These killings weren't related to any personal grievances. They were calculated strategic moves to intimidate the justice system itself. The murders crossed a line that even hardened criminals recognized, turning public opinion firmly against the Hells Angels and making Boucher the most wanted man in Canada. Despite massive police efforts to bring him to justice, Boucher initially proved elusive. His first trial for the prison guard murders ended in acquittal in 1998, with Boucher famously celebrating by taking a victory lap around Montreal on his motorcycle surrounded by fellow Hells Angels members. This bold demonstration of defiance only increased his legend within the criminal underworld. However, Boucher's reign couldn't last forever. In 2002, a second trial based on new evidence and testimony from former associates resulted in his conviction for ordering the murders of the prison guards. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, and the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years, the maximum penalty under Canadian law. Today, Maurice Mom Boucher remains one of the most infamous inmates in the Canadian prison system. His case represents the heights of power that Hells Angels leaders can achieve in the criminal underworld and the inevitable fall that comes with such a high-profile criminal lifestyle. His legacy of violence transformed not only the Hells Angels in Canada, but also how law enforcement approaches outlaw motorcycle gangs, leading to specialized police units and new laws specifically targeting biker gang activities. Despite decades of law enforcement pressure, criminal prosecutions, and the imprisonment of key figures, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club continues to operate worldwide. The willingness of new generations to risk their freedom by joining this organization speaks to the powerful allure of its outlaw image. However, as these profiles have shown, the reality behind that image often leads to tragic consequences for members, their families, and their communities.